They had plenty. They was like, why should I go and have to work in the mine to buy what? Because we're living our own lives here. Then that Union of South Africa had to force a lot of our people into waged labor. That is when now black progressive leaders of the time, mostly the conscious ones, who were able to read and write, who were able to understand what is happening here in South Africa and in the world, they then said that we need to constitute ourselves to oppose this Union of South Africa, or to ask for participation in the Union of South Africa. That is when the discussion started from 1910, 1911. And then they gathered in Bloemfontein on the 8th of January, 1912. So you see, like a meeting which is called in January. You can see that a lot of planning happened for the most of 1911. That is the meeting which founded the South African Natives National Congress and elected John Langalibalele Dube as the president and Solomon Tekisho Mohodi, Plaatjie as the Secretary General. Now, when the SANC was founded, which later on became the ANC, their demands were not one person, one vote. Their demands were not that all black people must be excluded. They said, some of us who are educated, as the chiefs, as those of us who have gone to school, at least give us some franchise. You must allow us to vote, to participate in elections. Are we still united fighters? The unity, we need that. When the ANC was founded as SANC, it was fighting for the civilized black man. That is what they were fighting for. They were saying, no, we're not saying everyone else must be voting. We're not saying everyone else must be given the wealth, the land. But some of us will understand your language, will respect you. That is what they were formed for. And because South Africa, the Union of South Africa was founded through the Union of South Africa Act in the British Parliament, their methods of struggle after formation in 1912, on the 8th of January, they sent a delegation to Britain to go and ask the royal family there to recognize a certain section of society as human beings. So you will see a photo where Plaatjie is there, John Langalibalele Dube is there, like wearing three-piece suits. They went to the Queen to say, no, we are actually presentable ourselves. Just recognize us into this Union of South Africa of whites only. So despite the fact that their initial and foundational demands were nowhere close to revolutionary, they perceived themselves as revolutionaries at that time. Because they were saying that at least if some of us are in, we will try to represent everyone. That is the nature and form of struggle that the African National Congress took for most of the years, from 1912 onwards. But in the 1920s, where there was beginning to be some shifts in terms of the interpretation of the struggle, you will know that in 1917, globally, the most important event to take place globally in 1917 was the Great October Socialist Revolution, which was led by Vladimir Lenin in Russia. Then in the 1920s, the SANC elected J.T. Gumede as a president. In 1927, he attended the 10th anniversary of the Great Socialist October Revolution in Russia. And then when J.T. Gumede came back, he said, actually, these things that we have been doing of saying certain sections of society must be the ones who are liberated from the black population is reactionary. Let's fight for everyone. He even said that I've been to a country where there is no racism, everyone else is treated almost equally. Under the Socialist Republic of Russia. He even said that I've seen a new Jerusalem. That is what J2 Gomede says when he comes back from Russia. He says, I've seen a new Jerusalem. And I've brought back the tools that are going to lead us into total freedom. And those tools were Marxism, Leninism, proper perspective as to how do we understand society. And guess what happened? The SANC leadership, the foundational leadership says, you can't say to us that we must demand for equality with everyone. It can't be everyone. It can't be everyone. One of the leaders even said that, are you saying that I must be equal with the people who are milking my cattle at home? No. It's only us, the civilized black men, who must be part of this freedom. And the organization continued like that. Petitions, letters to the Queen in Britain, begging for freedom from the oppressor. That is how foundationally this oldest liberation movement, so-called, used to conduct its struggle. The turning point fighters, this is very important, was in the 1940s, where the younger generation, like Nelson Mandela, Oliver Tambo, Mxolisi Majumbos, Congress Mbata, Walter Sisulu, all that generation, they said that we need to form a different organization to fight against colonialism and oppression of the black majority. Then they say that the only organization which majority of our people are familiar with is this one of the South African National Natives Congress, the ANC. Then they say that let's first use something called entrism to change it from within. So entrism is when you join an organization and then you want to change its direction from within. And that generation of Nelson Mandela, Congress Mbata, Mxolisi Majumbozi, A.P. Mda, Robert Sobukwe, of Anton Lembede, it's a generation that said that we want freedom for everyone. We want one person, one vote. It doesn't matter who that person is. And that generation is a generation that set as its generational mission the clarion call of freedom in our lifetime. So that generation is the generation of freedom in our lifetime. They said, we want total freedom. We are going to fight with everything humanly possible to achieve freedom in our lifetime. Are we still united, fighters? I need the unity. That is a generation of freedom in our lifetime. And the most important thing to take note is that that generation of freedom in our lifetime is the generation that when South Africa gained so-called political freedom, they were still at the forefront of their generational mission of freedom in our lifetime. That is the generation that said we're going to fight with everything. To the extent that when they went to the 40th Congress of the ANC in Bloemfontein, and you know Bloemfontein hosted a lot of conferences because Bloemfontein geographically is the center of South Africa. It's easier for everyone else to gain access from all corners of South Africa. They then were able to change the character of that organization and even elected leadership, which they thought is progressive. Put in a younger Walter Sisulu as the Secretary General. Elected Dr. J.S. Moroka as the President. Dr. J.S. Moroka from Kronstadt. And then He was brought in, he joined at the door, he was elected president inside the conference. And when he was giving the closing address of an organization he was a president of now, he says, no, thank you very much for electing me as the president of the African National Council. Then they say, oh, no, president, it's not council, it's Congress. And when the time proceeded, the freedom in our lifetime generation said we need to consult with the entirety of society as to what ideals do we espouse, what ideas do we hold together, what kind of a society do we want to build. And then they mobilized for the Freedom Charter. I'm rushing the history now. Then the Freedom Charter was adopted in 1955, which said South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. But the most important highlight in the Freedom Charter, it says the mineral wealth beneath the soil, the banks and monopoly industries shall be transferred to the ownership of the people as a whole. It even says that there is no government that can claim authority over the people unless if it is elected by all those people. And that document of the Freedom Charter became a real threat to the apartheid capitalist establishment. They said these people are very clear. They are saying the mineral wealth beneath the soil, the banks and monopoly industries shall be taken from us and be given to the people as a whole. This is socialism. Let's fight against it. And then the Freedom Charter was banned as a document. And then they said everyone else who associates with the Freedom Charter is a terrorist. To have a copy of the Freedom Charter was terrorism under the apartheid government. And then they arrested everyone, 156 people of leaders who associated with the Freedom Charter in something called the treason trial. In that treason trial, that President J.S. Moroka, who was elected after joining, he said that I am not part of these people that you are arresting me with. These people are the ones who are teaching me communism and communist ideas. I don't want to be associated with them. I actually love white people myself. And then he was released. The treason trial did not succeed to convict those because the court said that, but these are political views. But the Freedom Charter then became a rallying point for the liberation against apartheid for the very long time. All the formations that got to be founded were associating with the clarion calls of the Freedom Charter. The South African Communist Party got banned in 1950. Then every other organization that associated with the Freedom Charter was banned in 1960. And when it was banned, then there was a decision by President Nelson Mandela, part of the freedom in our lifetime generation, to say that if these people are not allowing us to exist politically as a legal organization, we are going to take up arms and take political power through any other revolutionary means possible. So you see, in the constitution of the EFF, it says that we're fighting for political power, yes, through elections. But we're also fighting for political power through any other revolutionary means possible. We'll explain what is that. Then President Nelson Mandela is the one who went to training in Tanzania, in Algeria, and founded in 1961 Umkhonto weSizwe, as an armed wing to fight against apartheid, to say that these people are not allowing for the organizations to exist peacefully. Let us fight against them physically. And that is what led to the arrests in what was the The trial that sent Nelson Mandela, Govan Mbeki, Walter Sisulu, Elias Mutsaledi, and all of them to prison for life. Forever. They were supposed to be imprisoned in Robben Island forever. And all other organizations were banned. Until a different generation took up the struggles in the 1960s, the struggle of the Black Consciousness Movement, led by Stephen Bantu Biko, to say that these people have been banned, they have been arrested, they have been suppressed. There is no activity against apartheid here. Let's fight against apartheid as students. So the South African Students Organization, SASO, which Steve Biko led, was also organizing the people in communities in the struggle against apartheid. A student organization led by students was present in communities, also involved in a lot of projects. Tangible projects, not just to go and walk around and come back to campus. They were involved in projects which included building daycare centers and clinics. As students, they got to reignite the fire that fought against, that got to get apartheid to be destroyed. That was under the leadership of Steve Biko. The June 1976 was inspired by the Black Consciousness Movement. Almost everyone else was organized in South Africa in the post-1960 period of exiling the liberation movement and of arresting most of its leaders. Almost everyone else who got to be organized after that were organized under the banner of the Black Consciousness Movement of Steve Biko. And of course, they got to suppress him. But he had already sown the seed that brought apartheid to its knees. Because June 16, 1976 was inspired by the Black Consciousness Movement. And that June 16, 1976 is what then led to apartheid leaders and apartheid capitalists to go now to start thinking as to how do we end apartheid, because this apartheid is costly. It's even killing children in campuses. In universities, it's suppressing those who are a voice against apartheid. And after that, that is when there were rolling activities of the youth to challenge apartheid much more practically. So on the 27th of July, 2013, after we took the resolution to found the Economic Freedom Fighters, we took a walk, a memorial walk to Hector Peterson Memorial Center in Soweto to salute the June 1916 generation that fought against apartheid. That generation was very decisive. It's the one that brought the energy to end apartheid. I'm fast forwarding fighters now. Now, you would know that after 1976, 1979, COSAS is founded as a recognition of the revolutionary potential of students in campuses. And then a lot of youth congresses and youth formations are formed all over South Africa. The action now becomes much more vigilant. There is proper struggle against apartheid, protest action, to demonstrate that apartheid is not permissible. Until in the mid-1980s, where the apartheid government said, let's go to start negotiating for this change to happen. The negotiations happened with those who were in exile, those who were in prison. But it culminated in 1994, which got to bring about this political freedom that was now to say everyone else can vote. But I want to highlight something, that before the 1994 agreement could be reached, One, there had to be release of political prisoners in 1990. By then, F.W. de Klerk was president of the white South Africa. And he must go and read his release speech of President Mandela and all the political prisoners. He said, we are going to unban all political parties, we're going to release political prisoners, and we're going to start building of a new society and government, which is going to be based on the principles, the proven principles of free enterprise and capitalism. So you must go and read the release speech of F.W. de Klerk. He said, no, we can release it, but the principle is that we are going to continue doing business as usual. Actually, in the 80s, Anglo-American had released a perspective of what are the scenarios of what is going to happen. They had said that at the end of the day, we think that negotiation is going to work and rhetoric is going to be dropped and we're going to continue doing business as usual. The capitalist establishment said, no, we can give them political power, but the economy, we can't let go of it. And in the negotiations that happened, the CODESA negotiations to negotiate for South Africa to have its first inclusive elections where black people were going to vote. Once they had agreed on everything, on the economy, that the economy won't be touched, once they had agreed that the land won't be touched, they still could not announce the election date. Because amongst the white establishment and capitalists, they said, there is only one problem. And that problem was called the Chris Hani problem. They said, this Chris Hani has not been coming to these negotiations. He's not part of our agreement. And he's very popular amongst young people. He's on the ground. Mandela is very old. What will happen after Mandela? What if this Chris Hani takes over and then he reverses everything? He's a self-proclaimed socialist communist. He's a general secretary of the South African Communist Party. In the recently held Congress of the ANC, for additional members, he had the highest votes. You can see he's popular everywhere. What should happen to Chris Hani? On the 10th of April 1993, Chris Hani was killed by Janusz Walus from Poland. And he was arrested with Clive W. Lewis. So Clive W. Lewis, the court says it's only two people who plotted to kill Chris Hani and then they killed him. It can't be two people. So you see the current Minister of Correctional Services here in South Africa and the Government of National Unity was a personal friend of Clive W. Lewis. The ones who plotted to kill Chris Hani. It's not possible that it's just Clive W. Lewis and Janusz Walus that plotted to kill Chris Hani. He was killed, then the 27th of April was announced as the day after he was killed that we were going to have inclusive elections for everyone else. I was still United Fighters. Now, then the elections happened, a government of national unity was constituted in 1994. But that government of national unity was already outlined in the interim constitution of 1993. That constitution said that if you get more than 20%, you are entitled to have executive deputy president of the state. If you get above 5%, you are entitled to be in cabinet. if you get 20%, you can have this number of cabinet posts. That is why in the first cabinet of President Mandela of 1994, you had F.W. de Klerk as a vice president alongside Thabo Mbeki. You had Piet Botha as the Minister of Mineral Resources. You had Cry van Niekerk as the Minister of Land Affairs. So all the strategic, you had Derek Kies as a Minister of Finance from the apartheid government. And then they retained Crystals as the governor of the South African Reserve Bank. Such that, and then the Minister of Environment and the Oceans was also from the National Party government. Such that when President Nelson Mandela constituted the government, the first government, the land question, the mineral resources questions, the environment and oceans questions, and the money of the state were controlled by the same people who controlled it before 1994. They said political power we can give you. You can be ministers of labor so that you can look after unions and all of those things. Titombo Wayne. So that you can make sure that these workers are not striking every day. All sorts of things. Then they retain economic power. And once they were secured that they've got the control of every system and the laws of South Africa, they then said, no, you can go ahead, we'll still control even the laws, even to change the constitution, which was adopted in 1996. You can't do it. So after the adoption of a reactionary constitution in 1996, the whites said, no, you can go on with government. You can't change this constitution. You need 2/3 plus 7 out of the 9 provinces to change the constitution. And that time they were secured that there's no one who's going to change the constitution because it protects private property. Now, fighters, there was a lot of hope amongst all black South Africans. Everyone thought that a black government is going to bring about free education for all. It's going to build quality houses for all. It's going to bring about sustainable permanent jobs for our people. There was too much confidence that a black government will not neglect our people. So you see, like, even amongst the youth movement, you must go and check the conference themes of all the youth organizations. They were saying defending the gains of democracy as a Congress theme, seizing the opportunities of democracy as we march on towards greater freedom. That was what was happening. Now, what gave then change to this was when we were in the Congress movement from 2008 moving forward. We said that this freedom which you say we must defend of 1994, is this freedom? Is this what we have truly the freedom that our people fought for? The mines are still controlled by the minority. The banks are still controlled by the minorities. The economy is still in the control of the minorities, of the white minority. The conditions of our people have not changed. And then we ask the question, what is to be done? Then we say that let us go back and draw inspiration from the generation of freedom in our lifetime. The generation of Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, of Nelson Mandela in the 1940s, of Oliver Tambo, of A.P. Mda, of Congress Mbata, of Mkolisi Majombos, of Anton Lembede. We say that let us borrow from that generation and then come with a struggle of economic freedom in our lifetime, which must be based on the non-negotiable demand for the return of our land without compensation. That must be based on the nationalization of mines, banks, and other strategic sectors of the economy. That must be based on the provision of free quality education for everyone up until university level. That must be based on building a proper developmental state that is going to empower the entirety of society and also play a role in the development of the African economy. And that is what got to be suppressed within the Congress movement. The suppression included the banishment and expulsions and all sorts of intimidations. Then towards the 26th and 27 July 2013, the question was, the struggle for economic freedom is still relevant, but what do we do with it? What do we do with the struggle for economic freedom in our lifetime? And then this 26 July, 26, 27 July that we are celebrating now was because we convened a National Assembly on what is to be done. So the National Assembly was called that. Even the banner was written, National Assembly on what is to be done. Uncle Tom's Hall in Soweto in Johannesburg. And there were three questions that were asked in that particular conference. Do we continue with the struggle for economic freedom? One, as a non-governmental organization that doesn't contest any political power. Two, do we fight for the struggle for economic freedom in our lifetime within the Congress movement? In the same way that the freedom in our lifetime generation did. Or three, do we constitute a political party that is going to fight for economic freedom in our lifetime as an independent organization? And a unanimous resolution was taken on the 27th of July 2013 to constitute the Economic Freedom Fighters as a militant, radical economic emancipation movement that is going to fight for economic freedom in our lifetime. With a clear agenda, with the non-negotiable cardinal pillars for economic freedom in our lifetime. To say that whatever we do, we must never shift on our demand that South Africa's land must be expropriated without compensation for equal redistribution. Nationalization of mines, banks, and other strategic sectors of the economy. Massive protected industrialization to create millions of jobs. Building of state capacity with the aim of abolishing tenders. Provision of free quality education, healthcare, and sanitation for all. Development of the African economy and a move that will advocate for a move from reconciliation to justice. And in an open, accountable, corrupt-free society. Those are the 7 cardinal pillars in the struggle for economic freedom in our lifetime. And of course, we then got to say that in such a struggle, you need ideological tools of analysis. You need to have clear ideas that are going to give you a clear perspective of how do you get there. Then we said that in character, the EFF is going to be Marxist, Leninist, and Fanonian. So the tools of analysis and guide to action is Marxism, Leninism, and Fanonian. Now, fighters, because all of us are students here, I want you to go and read 2 documents. One is the address by the General Secretary of the Communist Party of China, who is the sitting president of the People's Republic of China, General Secretary Xi Jinping, when he was commemorating the 200th anniversary of the birth of Karl Marx. He said that China's rapid development of the productive forces of the economy was through proper application of Marxism-Leninism. And China, by the way, in the 1970s, had an economy per capita which was smaller than South Africa, far much smaller. China, in terms of the highest and the biggest economies in the world, was number 100 in the 1970s. But we're talking today through proper application of Marxism-Leninism. China has got the second biggest economy in the world. It is going to be the biggest economy in the world in our lifetime. China has taken more than 700 million people outside of absolute poverty. It's not me, the General Secretary says, it's through the proper application of Marxism-Leninism. You must go and also check just how a country called Vietnam, which is led by the Vietnamese Communist Party, got to rapidly develop. And why do they rapidly develop? So this question was dealt with by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in the Communist Manifesto. They say that because you are not in pursuit of immediate profits, once the state is the one that develops the productive forces of the economy, such will happen faster. Because you're not looking for quick wins. You are doing that for generations to come. So that is the proper application of Marxism-Leninism, which in the current phase is about development of the productive forces. The development of productive forces means that you must build industry, you must build the economy to create jobs for our people, to develop technologies. The reason when we speak in parliament, everything we say, where is industrial development, is because we're saying, let us utilize a proper application of Marxism-Leninism to guide just how do we develop our economy, which will be able to take care of everyone. Marxism-Leninism fighters will get to know, and you must not be worried that you don't know what that is. You will get to know when time progresses. But one thing I'll tell you is that it is science. Its proper application will definitely lead you into prosperity. And science means the knowledge that has been gained through observation, has been critically proven and assessed and found to be true beyond any reasonable doubt. There are no two answers in science. One has to be correct. And that is what we then chose, that we need Marxism-Leninism to guide the struggle for economic freedom in our lifetime. As an organization, we therefore exist, one as a political party, an organization that is guided by democratic centralism, democratic consultations on all the decisions that we take. But once decisions are taken, there is no more permissibility to disagree with the decisions that are taken. We say that once decisions have been taken by the entire collective, your right to disagree dwindles into insignificance. It doesn't matter what you thought before that. We're an organization in the 11 years of our existence that is now participating as public representatives in majority of the municipality councils in South Africa. With more than 1,200 public representatives, councillors, Mafia is a councillor in Nkomazi municipality, a rural municipality of Nkomazi, in Mpumalanga province, which has got a lot of potential if they can be clear direction that must be given to Nkomazi. We exist, so I did say in the beginning that the organization has got different manifestations. One, it's an organization, it's a political party, a democratic centralist political party. It's an organization in government. As representatives in councils, as government in the city of Johannesburg, in the city of Ekurhuleni, in Mogale City, in Nelson Mandela Bay Metropolitan Municipality. We almost became government as well this year, if certain things should have happened differently. But we took a decision not to participate in government alongside reactionary forces. That is the decision that we took. But we will still have to answer as to how do we participate in government under the current circumstances. The other very important manifestation of the organization, it's an instrument for the ideological political warfare. That is where you should play a central role. Now, fighters, in the 2024 elections, and prior to that, the white capitalist establishment invested a lot of resources to delegitimize the economic freedom fighters. Through social media, through mainstream media, through everything else that they do. And we were not adequately prepared to counter an ideological political onslaught against the organization. Part of the reasons why the EFF did not grow in these elections is because there was concerted ideological warfare against the organization. For the first time, you had opposition parties who were not opposing the sitting government. All of them, they were opposing the EFF. The DA's primary agenda in the 2024 elections was the EFF. Action SA, Herman Mashaba was paid, I think he was paid per tweet. Every tweet he was, because every day EFF is this, EFF that. All these formations, an army organized against the EFF to delegitimize this in the eyes of society. A total ideological onslaught against the movement. That is what we got to experience. We as revolutionary activists, the conscious ones, we should be the wall that guards and protects the organization against an ideological warfare, because it has not come to an end. They have not stopped. They will continue to delegitimize the organization. They will do everything else like if it were according to them. The EFF is not supposed to exist at all. And of course, they are joined by all sorts of opportunists. A lot of resources, millions of friends, hundreds of millions of friends. Do you know everyone else who started a political party? If you say, I'm against the EFF, the open hammers will say, no, come. 10 million, 30 million rand. Go and fight them. That is what we have been dealing with. So we need to have a proper ideological fight back, which must be anchored by constant engagement and persuasion of our people. We, of course, exist as a Pan-Africanist organization. We embrace Pan-Africanism to say that gradually, the founding manifesto of the EFF says we are going to advocate for the gradual integration of the African continent in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the economy, in terms of how we get to relate amongst ourselves. That we must play a meaningful role in the development of the economy in all other parts of the African continent. That we must combine the resources that we have for common collective prosperity as Africans. Because there is a coincidence or reality that you cannot escape in the world now. Everywhere, people who look like me and you, people of African ancestry are found everywhere. They are treated like subhuman. You know, in terms of these measurements of the economy and development, The United States of America is supposed to be the most developed country in the world as of now. But go and take out the 40 million black people or people of African ancestry, and then you gauge them as a group of 40 million. Their socio-economic indications are the same as all of us here in the African continent. Go to Brazil. Brazil has got the second highest black population in the world after Nigeria. In terms of people of African ancestry, go and take them out and measure their socio-economic progress. They are the same as all of us. Why is it that all collective black action doesn't lead into success? Show me one successful African country in the African continent which has developed its industry, which controls its own economy without colonial and neo-colonial influence. If we do not do anything about that, it means all of us who are alive here, we will live and we will all disappear. Our great-children and great-grandchildren will still be subject of white supremacy, of neo-colonialism. They will still be domestic workers and gardeners of white people. Those that started the struggle before, they thought that, no, our grandchildren are going to live better than us. We are not different from Solomon Tekisho, Mukhodi. We are more or less in the same conditions. The question that we're asking, when we came with the struggle of economic freedom in our lifetime, was questioning whether we have got freedom. That do we even categorize this political freedom as real freedom? And the question which all of us must ask moving forward is that, is the freedom coming tomorrow? What do we do? Do we live? What do we do moving forward? How do we fight to attain real economic freedom in our lifetime? Thank you very much. Homizani Fire Brigade, Ayumbli Lolo. Homizani Fire Brigade, Ayumbli Lolo. Oye nabantwana bam, oye nezingane zam, oye nabantwana bam. Oh, yeah, andiniva man. Homizani Fire Brigade. Homizani Fire Brigade. Homizani Fire Brigade. Homizani Fire Brigade. Oh, yeah, nabantwana bam. Oh, yeah, nezingane zam. Oh, yeah, nabantwana bam. Oh, yeah, one last time. Homizani Fire Brigade. Homizani Fire Brigade. Homizani Fire Brigade. Ayumbli Lolo. Oh, yeah, nabantwana bam. Oh, yeah, nezingane zam. Oh, yeah, nabantwana bam. Oh, yeah, nezingane zam. Kanibizi Fire Brigade. Chu, Ayumbli Lolo. Kanibizi Fire Brigade. Chu, Ayumbli Lolo. Oh, yeah, nabantwana bam. Oh, yeah, neze. Oh, yeah, nabantwana bam. Oh, yeah, neze. Amandla. Away, two. Happy birthday, EFF. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, EFF. Happy birthday. Long